You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some bombshell news about one of Donald Trump's closest allies. Can you go over what just happened with Trump.org CFO Alan Weisselberg?
Yeah, the reporting is Alan Weisselberg is negotiating a guilty plea in a criminal case for allegedly having lied, having committed perjury when he testified before Judge Engoron in the New York business fraud trial against Donald Trump. I mean, it's not terribly surprising because Alan Weisselberg is already a convicted felon because he pleaded guilty previously to a 15-year-long criminal scheme to defraud when he was the chief financial officer for the Trump organization. But now this is somewhat surprising that even after serving time in Rikers pursuant to your earlier felony crimes, you walk into a courtroom in Donald Trump's civil fraud trial and you lie under oath. You commit perjury, Brian, in a very real sense. Alan Weisselberg, maybe 80 years old, he may be looking at another stint in Rikers for this new crime it appears he's committed.
What is the significance here between this update and the news that Judge Engoron is now pushing his ruling on the Trump.org trial into mid-February? Because we were expecting that ruling any minute now.
Yeah, a great question because it feels like there may be a connection between the fact that Judge Engoron originally said he expected to have his opinion out by the end of January. Then all of a sudden, we just got news that it's going to be pushed a couple of weeks. It's going to be more like mid-February. We get that news at the same time we learn one of the witnesses that testified before Judge Engoron, Alan Weisselberg, may have committed perjury. So here's the thing. Judge Engoron, I'm quite sure, has been poring over the transcripts and all of the financial evidence that was received during the course of an 8-week trial in Donald Trump's case and is trying to reach some conclusions about what to make of that evidence, what evidence to credit, what evidence to discredit. And all of a sudden, one of the important witnesses who testified in that case, Alan Weisselberg, allegedly committed perjury. The last thing a judge wants to do is issue an opinion that relies on testimony that he now knows was perjured testimony. Alan Weisselberg lying to him about the true state of financial affairs at the Trump organization. So he may have to take a step back, take another look at his findings that he may have been prepared to release and make sure they're sort of bulletproof and that he doesn't rely on perjured testimony to reach whatever findings he's going to reach in the Trump business fraud case.
Well, are the lies that Alan Weisselberg told, are they material to the ruling that Judge Engoron would make with regard to how much Donald Trump and his kids and the Trump org have to pay?
Yeah, Brian, you're sounding like a lawyer now because in order to charge somebody with perjury, one, the person had to lie, but two, the lie had to be material to an issue of relevance. Let me give you an example. If Alan Weisselberg was asked by one of the attorneys, "What'd you have for breakfast?" and he said oatmeal, but he lied because he really had an egg McMuffin sandwich, would
Yeah.
that be untrue? Yes. Would it be material to an issue relevant to the case? No. So actually, it would not serve as the basis of a perjury charge. So if Alan Weisselberg is negotiating a guilty plea for having lied, then absolutely it was about something that was material to the case. Now, some of the reporting suggests that what he lied about was the claim that he had nothing to do with the assertion that Donald Trump's penthouse apartment was 30,000 square feet, when in reality it was 10,000 square feet. That is one of the allegations that involves Trump overinflating and overestimating the value of his assets so he could go on and defraud banks. Well, there was some pretty good reporting done, I believe, by Forbes magazine. They put out an article saying, wait a minute. We have direct evidence, conversations and email traffic with Alan Weisselberg, where he was actually arguing vigorously and falsely that the square footage of Trump's penthouse apartment was 30,000 square feet. So it looks like Alan Weisselberg is just kind of flat out caught in his lies. And it looks like that is what may serve as the basis for his perjury charge.
Glenn, are there any implications here for Donald Trump given this update?
It can't be helpful that his chief financial officer for decades is not only a cheat, as evidenced by his earlier guilty plea of being involved in business fraud, but he's also a great big liar. And not just any old liar, a liar who's willing to go into court and under oath make false claims that, if true, would work to the advantage of Donald Trump. There's no way of telling whether this may squeeze some additional truthful information out of Alan Weisselberg that the authorities could use against Donald Trump in some future investigation or prosecution. But one thing we can say definitively, none of this is good for Donald Trump.
What would Alan Weisselberg have faced punishment wise if he didn't lie to the court versus what he will now likely face?
Yeah, good question. So in the Judge Engoron case, the Trump civil fraud case, one of the penalties that Attorney General Tish James is seeking is, I believe, a lifetime ban of not only Donald Trump from working in the real estate industry in New York, but Alan Weisselberg and the comptroller of the Trump organization, Jeff McConney, as well. So whether this could result in any additional punishment or penalties, any additional fines that Alan Weisselberg may be ordered to pay is an open question, but it looks like we'll know in a couple of weeks once we see Judge Engoron's ruling.
But it's possible that he could be sent back to Rikers because he's now committed another felony. All the guy had to do was just nothing, and he would have basically had a forced retirement, and he could just live the rest of his life. Now he may be going to federal prison again.
All he had to do was tell the truth at Trump's business fraud trial, and he would have been largely in the clear. At least he wouldn't have been running the risk of returning to Rikers for a second stint. And
Right.
here's the thing. So the prosecutors are going to have a little bit of a challenge on their hands. Why do I say that? Because Alan Weisselberg is 80 years old. Alan Weisselberg served 100 days at Rikers the first time in connection with his guilty plea when Alvin Bragg, the district attorney from Manhattan, was prosecuting the Trump organization and Alan Weisselberg. So now they're in the process of negotiating a guilty plea for the potential perjury charge. Does Alvin Bragg insist on more jail time for Alan Weisselberg, which I think is the right answer? Why? Because now you're a convicted felon who committed perjury. You're a repeat offender. So all things being equal, he should absolutely get another period of incarceration adjudged for his new crime. But, if Alvin Bragg says, look, he's 80, it's a perjury charge, he's already served time in Rikers, I'll just make him plead guilty, put it on his record, put him on probation, but I will not require him to go back to Rikers. There's a dangerous message that sends. The message that sends is people can be called as witnesses in a case involving Donald Trump. They can lie under oath, commit the crime of perjury, and even if they are repeat offenders, they can avoid going back to prison for that crime. That is not a helpful message to send, because that will not deter anyone from lying for Donald Trump in future cases.
I totally agree. Glenn, let's finish off with this. Would you liken this to anything related to the mob? I mean, you have these guys who are just lying over and over and just getting screwed over and over, all in deference to Donald Trump, who, by the way, would throw them under the bus in a heartbeat, and yet they all continuously do it. This guy's 80 years old and may very well be heading to federal prison for a second time, all in deference to someone like Donald Trump. And it happens over and over again, where people are just losing their freedom, losing their financial freedom, losing their families, all over this guy.
Yeah, you know what? In criminal organizations or criminal enterprises where we use our RICO laws to take down those kind of criminal enterprises, the Mafia is one example. It's all about loyalty to the boss. It's all about not ratting out the boss. And that sure is what this feels like with Alan Weisselberg, even after he was convicted of being involved in long-term fraud with the Trump organization, is still willing to go in and take one for the boss and lie under oath about the size of Donald Trump's penthouse apartment. I mean, it certainly feels a little Mafia-esque.
Yeah. Well, we'll obviously stay on top of any updates that we get in this trial here as we wait to see, as we wait to see a ruling from Judge Engoron for this $370 million lawsuit, as well as any perjury charges that Alan Weisselberg may face. So for those watching, if you want to follow along, make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.